Fight!
The first ever From Pixels to Plastic. My name is Pixel Dan. I do a lot of toy stuff online. Big joke like video games too, and that's what kind of was the inspiration behind not only this panel, but also the first ever video series I started doing online, which I still continue to this day, which is called From Pixels to Plastic. And the whole idea behind that series is to take a look at toys and various merchandise that is spawned from video games. Something that I personally have always found very interesting ever since I was a kid. So I put together this fun little panel just to kind of talk about the history of toys and fun merchandise and stuff like that. That's all come from video games, games that we love to play. I suckered these two both into sitting on this panel with me. They might look like deer in headlights up here, but I thought it would be fun to so here's an introduction.
Hey, I'm John Malia. I'm from RetroWare TV.
From Planet of Wolf and RetroWare TV. I do shows like 16-Bit Gems and the way games work. I don't know what toys are.
Yeah, and that's kind of the thing. I always have found, as I'm a big toy collector, but I'm also a big gamer too. I've always played video games. I love the retro stuff. And one of the things I've always kind of noticed in this whole little crossover genre is it seems like everybody that collects toys probably also plays video games, but not everybody that plays video games collects toys. But there's probably at least one thing that you might pick up here and there. Maybe you see some cool piece of merchandise, some neat little action figure. Maybe there's a pre-order bonus you got and you've put on your shelf from a favorite game of yours. But then there are guys like me who like video games so much that he wants to have cool action figures based on those fun games that he played. And one of the big things when I was growing up, I used to, I was an NES kid, and I played MAGfest and all these games like that, and I wanted action figures based on these games, and they didn't really exist back then.
Anything like it wasn't exactly.
Yeah. Right, and then more like real action figures. There are some fun things, and we'll get to that when I'm going to kind of show you guys some cool stuff on slideshows. But, a lot of the stuff that did come out was also like, Japan did have a lot of merchandise and stuff like that for their games. So, as kids, it's not like we could go out and import a bunch of cool toys and action figures from Japan. Like, we were kind of stuck without really having anything. But, one of the first video games, and this is where I want to start, one of the first video games that really spawned a big merchandising frenzy in the United States was Pac-Man. And obviously Pac-Man did a lot more than, how do I make it sound? Obviously Pac-Man did a lot more than toys and stuff. I mean, everybody, Pac-Man Fever had music, it had all kinds of crazy stuff going on.
Which, by the way, so I might be jumping the gun here again, but you have a wonderful book up here called, by the editors of Consumer Guide, Pac-Mania, Top Strategies for Home and Arcade Pac-Man. And there's even the chord, or the
top strategies.
The lyrics to Pac-Man Fever right here.
Yeah, this is an amazing book.
Is that Buckner and Garcia?
It is.
It was published in 1982. I love it how it's got like the rain blinding. It was published in 1982, and this book is just filled with all of this crazy merchandise for Pac-Man, but it's totally presented to you in a way that's like trying to push you to like buy it, which is really, really fun.
64 pages of just Pac-Man merchandise.
So I'm going to show you some of the scans out of this magazine. One of the first things on here, which is actually really, really cool, I love this, and if you have seen any of my stuff online, I did a video on the Pac-Man board game. There have been several board games based on video games, but Pac-Man is one of the coolest because they made the board look like the actual Pac-Man.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
And the pellets are recreated as marbles, so you put these marbles all over the board, and then there are 4 players, so there's yellow Pac-Man, green Pac-Man, red Pac-Man, blue Pac-Man, and they all have teeth for whatever reason.
Like the game.
Right, just like the game. Just like you remember with their teeth. But you actually go around the board and you chomp the marbles.
There was this period of time in like the 80s and 90s where a lot of games used marbles.
A lot of them.
Not so much anymore.
Yeah.
I think
It's a choking thing.
Bill Brown was the best stock in the marble company or something.
Like pole position on the board game.
Yes.
Were there marbles?
No, but it was really, really action
not actually played this, this is not a bad game.
No.
The thing that might already, I'm sorry, I'm jumping again maybe, but what excites me about this game playing is that you have the Pac-Man, and they don't just, you don't just pick up the marble and put it in their head. They go and they move up and you push down on it, and they chomp on the marble, and it goes into a compartment. It's pretty.
It was really neat. Yeah, there was like a hole basically in the mouth chomp. So when you roll over the marble, you actually pop the marbles in. It was cool. It was very cool. But then you can see these awesome kids that are very, very excited about their Pac-Man pajamas and sweatshirts there, and this is where things get really funny in this catalog.
Oh, I should have brought my. I dressed as Pac-Man in kindergarten.
Yeah.
And it's the stapled on, like, frightening, nightmarish Pac-Man face, and then the.
Oh, you're talking about the plastic mask?
Plastic mask. The thing that you're wearing is essentially like, I think it's a picture of the playing field on it.
Oh, wow.
Awful.
Oh, that's amazing. Great. Everybody had those Halloween costumes when they were younger, right? Plastic masks and the plastic little strong things that you wore.
That really, really strong elastic.
Yeah.
Stapled. So
I love the guy in the middle with the tie. He looks like a winner. And we got the incredibly sexy woman who doesn't appear to be wearing any clothes except for Pac-Man.
That's how you wear it. That's right.
And it doesn't stop there with the sexy, my friends. Because now we have.
This makes me want
I know, right? That's exactly what they're after here.
Image 5 is a great butt shot with surprisingly tight-fitting Pac-Man details.
It's some amazing stuff, and it just cracks me up looking through this. Yeah, you got the woman in her long Pac-Man.
This shoot was on a Monday afternoon. Yeah. The morning was the family video shoot.
It's amazing.
Followed by this centipede cereal commercial.
That's right. So following Pac-Man, we have the boom of Nintendo. And obviously this is where you got things like Mario that really, really takes off.
Sorry, it does look rather like Mario's leg is coming out of his crotch there.
You're absolutely correct.
I did not even realize that. So that's amazing. How many of you guys remember the Nintendo cereal system?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it had 2 bags of cereal in it. Half of it was Mario and half of it was Zelda.
It was like a giant Nerds box.
Right? Yeah. Oh my gosh, it was so sweet. Yeah. So the Mario cereal was fruity, the Zelda cereal was berry, but pieces that completely resembled game sprites.
What were the sprites they were supposed to resemble?
I don't actually.
Oh,
But they rescued breakfast, according to me.
I say super simple.
Some of the other things I got shown on here, the top row there are the Super Mario Bros. 3 McDonald's premiums that came in the Happy Meals. You guys might remember those as well. I remember being so excited when I saw the commercial that there was Mario toys and Happy Meals because, as I talked about earlier, one of the things I was sorely lacking in my playthings was Mario stuff. I wanted some Mario toys. So I had all 4 of these toys from McDonald's. Collector's pins and all kinds of stuff like that were also hitting the stores all the time. So.
And it's strange in the late 80s and such, even almost up through today, is that there haven't been a lot of Nintendo toys as such. But I would have killed for like a Mario action figure or something in the late 80s. So those McDonald's toys were about the closest we could get.
Yes.
And as a side note, the Koopa Paratroopa is by far the superior of the four.
Like the Goomba did flips.
He did
just like in the video.
But there was a little squeeze, thing on the back of the Koopa Paratroopa to make him go, hop, hop, hop. Brilliant.
Yeah, and Luigi had a little wind-up thing that made him spin around in circles for whatever reason. He was out of control.
I'd also like to remember that.
Yeah.
Spinning Luigi, okay.
I'd also like to mention that these are surprisingly cheap on eBay.
Yes.
Like, never been open condition. Like I got a Luigi or something for $3, I think.
I think children ate more Happy Meals back then, because that's,
Well, so many of us went to McDonald's to get those toys. So, come on. But yes, serious lack of actual action figures. You really couldn't walk into a toy store and buy like a Mario action figure or a Zelda action figure. And certainly no Mega Man action figure when these games were out on the NES and they were really successful. There were, however, the closest that we could get kind of things were these awesome little PVC figurines. And these were great because Nintendo did put these out in stores. They were unarticulated, but at least it was something. And their big focus, obviously, is Super Mario Brothers. And then there were a couple, I think there was one from Legend of Zelda, which was Link, and then they also did a King Hippo and a Little Mac from Punch-Out. These are very, very cool figures. These are a little more obscure now, especially the King Hippo and the Little Mac. There's not a lot of Punch-Out merchandise out there, and so those guys can go for quite a bit of money when they pop up online for sales. But those were some very cool.
Who put these out?
I don't actually remember. It's a company that does most of the little PVC figures. I want to say it was like Imperial or
So
something.
it was a Nintendo with a licensing.
Absolutely, yeah. And they actually came on little blister cards, and like the Zelda one had one that looked like Zelda game artwork on it. The Punch-Out one looked like a boxing ring and everything, and then the Mario one just had like a cool blue background with the Mario logo. But they were very, very cool little toys. I had several of the Marios as a kid. But as you can see, they basically, like there was one Luigi, and then there was like 7 different Marios. Doing all these different things, shooting a fireball, climbing the vine, and all that kind of stuff.
Were these sold just in toy stores?
They were sold in toy stores, yeah, toy stores.
How the hell did I miss this now?
Yeah.
I think I actually had some of those Mario figures. I distinctly remember the one with him finding that really strange kind of green spike, which I guess is supposed to be a vine, but whatever.
Right. One of the other things, this is a really cool one, and one that a lot of people don't really remember, and I've actually got one of them sitting up here. These are the Nintendo trophy figures. These were released by Hasbro in the late 80s during the big Mario boom, or the big Nintendo boom at the beginning. And they did 3 different styles of these, and several of them based on the 3 different games. So there was Super Mario Brothers, there was Punch-Out, and there was Legend of Zelda. And the idea behind these, they called them trophy figures because they essentially depicted a scene from the game of Swords. I mean, you guys remember when Mario kicked that Koopa Troopa in the face? That's right out of the game.
What in the world is that?
Yes. Yes, are these Goombas? I don't know. I think they're supposed to be Goombas. You guys know. Mario jumping on them. But if you see down there in the corner, there's a little sticker on these that says name, date, and high score. The way they marketed these was as actual trophies, and you were supposed to actually put your name, the date, and your high score on there and like award yourself or award your friends with a trophy for accomplishments in these games.
That's cool.
And they're very, very cool toys. They're getting harder and harder to find, especially the Punch-Out ones. Forget about it. The Punch-Out ones are insane. Because they were very cool. I mean, you have Mac fighting, Class Joe, and there's a King Hippo one, and it's basically all the different fighters from the game. It's really, really cool stuff. But I find these incredibly interesting now because they kind of feel like the predecessors to the Amiibos, which are the current kind of big thing on store shelves, which we're going to talk about a little bit. But aside from these and those little PVC figures I showed you guys, the 80s didn't really have a lot of video game action figures. And these were neat, but they weren't what I wanted. Yeah, it's something I could really play with and really recreate scenes.
But I think, yeah, they just a huge opportunity. I was not a crazy toy collector.
Right.
I didn't have a lot of G.I. Joes. I didn't have a lot of Pac-Man. But I would have loved to have a Simon Belmont.
Right?
That would have been great.
Yeah.
Because video games are the only things I can play, basically. So it would have been great to have something else.
Absolutely. That's how I've always felt. So we move into the 90s, and with the 90s, we get a lot of late 80s, and then in the early 90s, suddenly there are all these cartoons on TV based on video games. You guys remember the Super Mario Bros. Super Show, Captain and the Game Master, stuff like that, but as we get more into the 90s, we get series such as Double Dragon and Mega Man, and these cartoon shows finally gave us the opportunity to get some action figures based on these video games, except now they're based on the cartoons and not the actual video games. So it's like we're a little bit closer to getting what I wanted, but we weren't quite there yet, but I bought that, especially the Mega Man ones, because the one thing I always wanted the most as a kid was Mega Man toys.
I definitely had some of those Mega Man figures. That's an angry looking Mega Man.
He's so angry and he's so buff. He has muscles. Yeah. Those Mega Man figures had a really great play feature, though, because as you can see, he had the interchangeable arm cannon, and he had a little Mega Buster shot that actually fired out of the cannon, and all the Robot Masters came with their own unique little weapon that Mega Man could steal and put in his Mega Buster and shoot it, which I thought was very clever to recreate, So the Double Dragon stuff, fairly easy to come by now. They're decent figures. Billy and Junie are probably the most sought after because all the other characters were kind of created for the cartoon. They didn't really appear in the games. And obviously they got those weird green dragon tattoos on their chests and stuff like that. They have the masks and the swords. All stuff that we didn't really see except for WW5, which was based on the cartoon. But those are pretty easy to come by. These Mega Man figures from Bandai have kind of gone up in value quite a bit these days, especially if you want to find them complete with all the firing stuff and the mechanism, all that good stuff. So they're a little bit more expensive now. But very cool toys, actually. Maybe even more than that. I've seen some of the Mega Man stuff go around $60, $75 a figure if they've got all their weapons or they're still packaged. Really kind of depends. I mean, obviously stuff on eBay is usually a lot more expensive than if you can go find it somewhere in person, but that's about what they go for online these days. Some of the other stuff in the 90s, which I loved this, I always thought was a little odd. We got Street Fighter II action figures courtesy of the G.I. Joe toy line. I don't know how this came about, but we got a whole series of characters from Street Fighter II in the G.I. Joe scale. As you can see, it actually is branded G.I. Joe, so they made them part of their line. They came with a ton of weapons, just like G.I. Joe. So they had swords and guns and all kinds of cool stuff, just like in Street Fighter, the video game. But also a lot of these guys, some of them had original sculpts, but a lot of them did just take sculpts from already existing G.I. Joe figures and kind of mashed them together to create these, which is why you see Blanca wearing pants, and Chun-Li's body is the same as Scarlet's body with a different head. So they did some stuff like that. Ken has grenades and stuff strapped to his chest. He always had those grenades on his gi and stuff. But I just follow the G.I. Joe canon to the purists. I don't know actually.
It's like, oh yeah, there was that Street Fighter 2 scenario.
I don't think so. But yeah, I probably not to be purists.
I don't see some Street Fighter 2 G.I. Joe fan fiction.
Yeah. Well, and they had vehicles in this line. They had a big play set, so they really went all out for this. It was just a little weird because it was like G.I. Joe. It wasn't Street Fighter, but it was still really cool kind of getting some of these characters from Street Fighter in action figure form. And following right behind that, I forgot the picture here, Mortal Kombat did the exact same thing. Right after the Street Fighter G.I. Joe line, there was a Mortal Kombat G.I. Joe line that was very, very similar. It's crazy. It's sacrilegious. Cross-pollination. I'll tell you that, well, the best thing about that, though, is that you now have Street Fighter characters and Mortal Kombat figures that are the exact same style and scale of action figures. Yeah. So you can make them fight each other. Oh, that was cool. But moving on into the later 90s, we finally start getting some actual action figures based on video games. This is where things really kind of started taking off towards getting some real toys like I always wanted to see. And one of the big companies that did this in the late 90s was Toy Biz. They put out this whole series of toys that they labeled the video game superstars. So you can see all these boxes have that same video game superstars thing at the top. And they did things from Tomb Raider to Zelda Ocarina of Time, which were great because you can see Link comes with a Epona, and Zelda has got a horse and everything there. We had the Mario Kart line, which is tremendous. Because they did every character from Mario Kart with their carts, and the figures were actual figures that could sit on the carts. The carts launched things like shells and stuff at each other. Talk about a line that's gotten really expensive now. That's one of them. It's very pricey. They did a Marvel vs. Capcom line as well as a Marvel vs. Street Fighter line. So they're two separate things, but they did, that line gave us action figures of guys like Strider and Captain Commando and Mega Man and all kinds of cool characters in that line. They did an entire Resident Evil toy line, which is very cool and actually has gone up in value quite a bit these days. And even Laura Croft got herself an action figure for the first time thanks to Toy Biz. So Toy Biz really kind of like, I don't know, it was sort of like this whole renaissance of video game figures that are actually based on their video games. Like, we finally started getting some stuff. It was very, very cool. Why Toy Biz doing a lot? Toy Biz did a lot of the Marvel toys. So if you guys all grew up with like the X-Men action figures, the Marvel superheroes action figures. In the late 90s, early 2000s, Marvel Legends was a huge line that they were doing. Toy Biz was actually a Marvel Comics toy company. Oh, okay. So that's what they were doing a lot of.
Do you have any idea why it took so long for toy companies to say, oh, these video games are popular, maybe we should make some videos?
I really don't. It's always something that is just, it doesn't make sense to me, honestly. I mean, I know that, I don't know if I always kind of wonder too if Nintendo was just a little more protective of some of their stuff too, and they didn't want to license it.
That's what I've heard, but then again, there's also like a Nintendo cereal system.
That's true, that's true.
Yeah, it's weird, but I guess if you had a disconnect between the fact that a lot of management licensing decisions might have come not from Nintendo America at that time, or other toy companies would have been sourced out of Japan.
Yeah,
And then it became far more.
I think it's still that way.
Yeah. And then yeah, I guess a little more cool now. They're able to make those licensing payments and distribution.
The only other thing I can think of is that in the late 80s, even as Nintendo was taking over the world, a lot of people in the West, especially maybe older toy companies, still thought of Nintendo or video games as a fad after the crash in the mid-to-early 80s. I'm completely speculating.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I always wondered.
I'm guessing cartoon series and other more established IP probably had much of its online merchandise far more upfront distribution. And guys might have been doing it at that time.
And that's a good point too, because a lot of toy lines, especially this day and age, a lot of toy lines really rely on having media to back up the toy lines. Cartoons and video games now. Maybe at this time, video games, they didn't really count as viable media to support the toy line. The 80s was the huge boom of having toy lines based on cartoons.
The game was the product itself.
Right, the game was the product. The game was a toy.
It
wasn't a toy, exactly. So that's probably exactly what it was. It probably just took them a while to go. We could actually,
we're not criminalizing our own brand like it is. We're not buying the game, buying the toy.
Right. Oh, hey, I just put them out of order. There's those Mortal Kombat G.I. Did you? Yeah. They were actually slightly better than the Street Fighter ones, I thought, because they didn't have somebody's got the massive cannon and everything, and some of them have swords and stuff, but I felt like these were a little bit more video game based than G.I. Joe based.
They're still cannibalized models.
They're a little bit better. These are actually a little bit more original sculpts, and they were able to reuse like Scorpion and Sub-Zero and Smoke and Reptile, all the same figure, just painted different colors.
Are these actually G.I. Joe branded, or was it just...
These were not G.I. Joe branded. The Street Fighter ones were, the Mortal Kombat ones were not.
They were.
Right, but the bodies themselves are built exactly the same. They articulate the same way, so they fit right in. Okay, so let's jump forward a little bit. We're in modern day now, and you walk into a toy store now, the toy aisles are filled with video game merchandise and toys. There's whole sections of Toys R Us that are specifically for toys based on video games, and we're in an era now where app games and everything are what the kids are playing. And unlike what they did when we were kids playing video games, the toy companies are jumping on this, and they're making toys for all these kids who are obsessed with Minecraft and Plants vs. Zombies and stuff like that. And just as successful as those games are, these toys are wildly popular. I know from experience just by doing videos on some of these things and seeing the view counts that they get from all the kids that are watching this stuff because they like playing these games. So kids today have a little bit better because they're actually getting toys based on their video games.
They're getting videos based on the toys they like.
Yeah.
My sister's husband has a nephew, and one day, just randomly at a family gathering, he was talking about how he loves watching pixel band videos on YouTube. And I looked at him like, oh, you're going to think I'm so cool right now. I know, man. But yeah, I can see that. That's awesome.
Videos based on toys have never worked.
Yeah, that'll never work. It's crazy. All right. So now I'm going to start talking about some of the modern toys that are out there that I really, really enjoy. And they're doing some really crazy things. And I almost feel like some of these toy companies are trying to make up for the lack of stuff that we were getting back in the day when we were kids. And also, a lot of these guys that work at these toy companies now were kids just like us back then playing these games. So now they're making the toys that they wanted to see too.
They're doing kind of hipstery too. Like,
they really are.
I know, I mean, they're ironically releasing the Friday the 13th.
Yes. Yeah, so what you guys see here is a line of action Toys primarily does action figures based on a lot of these movies like Predator and RoboCop and the horror films and Rambo and Gremlins and stuff like that. They make very, very cool, very highly detailed action figures that a lot of collectors pick up. And within the last year, they started this really crazy idea where they were going to take a lot of these properties that they already had the rights to make action figures to and repainting them to look like their old NES video games. And they started the line with Jason in his awesome purple outfit and his crazy mask, like glowy looking mask.
Sorry, I just have to ask. Do you think, this is a stupid question, so everyone knows at least about the Angry Video Game Nerd and how Predator was one of his earliest and most famous reviews. Do you think that if that review never came out, we would have this thing?
Oh, probably not. I feel like a whole legend has been built around that.
It's just like, it's so funny to me that like, you have like a weird circle jerky kind of thing where it's like, you have a toy line based off of an old, crappy NES game that was only made popular again in the 2000s because of an internet video.
Yeah, I think he vocalized it. I think we all do it. So.
Yeah.
From that age group, we remember that game.
Right.
I'm a little scared.
That was the only thing I can say came away from that game, which would make me want to think it was when he appeared on your screen. That purple jumpsuit, it was quite disturbing.
Yeah, I agree completely. That's got it. And same with all of this stuff, because a lot of these games are not good games, except for Pac-Man. Yeah. But the way they're doing this line is just so fun, because the boxes that they come in look like the old Nintendo boxes. They're like a replica of the old Nintendo boxes, but they have a flap that folds open, so there's a window box that fully showcases the figure, and above the figure they got like the health bars and everything from the video game. So it's very, very cool packaging that is aimed completely at us, you know, that love or hated playing these old Nintendo games. And I think it's just a really fun and unique idea for a toy line, and it's been crazy successful. That Jason was an exclusive at San Diego Comic-Con, and it was meant to be just a fun, silly one-off figure. It's sold out at that show. It's now really valuable online, and because it was so successful, it just made them decide to keep going with this line and keep releasing these figures.
I actually didn't even realize it did anything beyond Jason.
Yeah,
but Batman one in particular from the NES Sunsoft games.
The Batman one is even a unique story because for the longest time, people kept requesting the Batman. Like when NECA was doing this line, people were like, you gotta make one Batman. And NECA kept saying, well, here's the problem, we can't do Batman toys because we don't have the rights to DC Comics because DC Collectibles makes their own action figures and Mattel also has a license for DC, so we can't do Batman. Well, DC Comics liked this toy line so much that they came to NECA and said, we're gonna let you guys do Batman. That's amazing. Like, that's crazy that this line was so successful that they got a one-off like license just to do this one Batman figure. It's crazy.
The RoboCop looks good.
The RoboCop.
The question is how many people who played the original, who were kids playing the original Batman on NES at working at DC were like, oh, I remember that game. Yeah, they go big and you do this. Let's get going.
Yeah. And now they're getting a lot of all you gotta do is Ninja Turtle, and that's gonna be another problem because they don't. They did comic. Playmates has Ninja Turtles, yep. And NECA did some cool comic-based Ninja Turtles years ago, like when Turtles was in a hole. But since Turtles is huge again now and Playmates has full license, NECA can't do anything with those sculpts, so it's going to be rough. But it would be very cool to see a turtle in this style. Yeah. Painted like a Nintendo spray. That would be so cool. Yeah.
What are some future ones?
I can't tell you the future ones.
But that means you know.
I know some. I'm actually pretty good friends with NECA. I'll tell you what, I do well.
I tweet them constantly when you put videos. I'm hoping they'll send me these.
So Rambo in the front here, he's actually not even released yet. He's coming out at the end of this month, I think, or next month. And they also did Rocky based on the Sega Master System, which is the first Master System inspired one they've done. And actually, if you go to Toys R Us right now, they have Terminator vs. RoboCop 1s on the shelves based on the Super Nintendo game. And New York Toy Fair is next month, and they are supposed to be showing off like a whole new line of these video game toys.
So, okay, so John and I are not nearly as connected in the toy world as you are, so we don't know crap. We can speculate. John, what do you think the next one will be? I guess I'm Marty McFly from Back to the Future.
That would be crazy. I keep pushing them to do a Gremlin from the Gremlins game because they...
Gremlins 2?
Yeah, from
That
Gremlins
is
2.
such a good game.
Yeah, they're obviously pulling like the third
and it's kind of cool to speculate just based on some of the other toys that they make. That's why I think the Gremlin is inevitable, because they did a whole line of Gremlins action figures.
Yeah.
They could easily repaint, Spike and make them like an NES style. I think that'd be awesome.
I mean, Back to the Future one almost makes sense. It's 2015, so we're talking about Back to the Future this year. People remember that game. It was
You'd be all over that one.
I would get it. I would
Look at that. I'm trying to see if he has a towel for it.
I don't know a lot. I'll know more soon.
Well, no one else makes Back to the Future.
Here's the packaging I should have shown it to you. So that's a sample of what the boxes look like for these. It's very, very cool. They even like make it look all worn around the edges of the Nintendo box.
How much do these run?
They're about $20.
Yeah,
Only $20. And you can see they come with like interchangeable hands and weapons and all kinds of cool stuff. So, but you don't even have to open them if you don't want to, because the boxes are so cool that it's fun.
I guess they assume some people will collect them just to keep the box.
Yeah.
So enjoy them by looking at them.
Yeah, I would put them in another box and then put them on the shelf. That was crazy.
All right, so, good question, yes?
I remember having it in a Series 1 for Castlevania. You think they might be in Series 2 eventually?
What's that? I'm sorry.
I remember that NECA did a Series 1 for Castlevania several years ago.
They did do some Castlevania stuff. I haven't heard if they're going to do any more Castlevania, because they did Simon, Dracula, Alucard, and Succubus, which were amazing figures, but I have not heard anything on a second series. I can ask. I'll find out. Yeah.
So just being requested.
Right here is a sample of some of the amazing figures we're getting now. And the thing about these is these are all mostly imports. But the good news is that a lot of these figures are a lot easier to get a hold of today. It's really easy to get a lot of these import toys because most of the online toy stores just stock them, and it's not overly expensive to get them. You will still pay a little bit more for a figure like this. I think Samus ran about $50 there. Mewtwo is probably about a $40 figure. Mega Man and Sonic, they were both about $30. But they're some of the best representations we've ever seen of these characters in figure form. They come with multiple interchangeable parts. They have like attachable, like a beam coming out of Samus there. Mewtwo's holding a little blast. Mega Man came with Rush, which is awesome. Sonic has like a gold, a ring, and all kinds of fun stuff. And they've done, this is lines like SH Figuarts, Figma, stuff like that. They did an amazing Link from Skyward Sword. They did Pit from Kid Icarus, which is crazy that we got a Pit figure. I often refer to these in the videos that I do as like me building up my Super Smash Brothers collection. Because even though these figures are coming from some different companies, they're all like great to scale with each other. They're some of the best representations that we've ever gotten of these figures, and they totally work in like a Smash Brothers style.
And someone should really make some toy line based off Super Smash Brothers.
Somebody really should, right? But these are, like I said, these are kind of import stuff, so they're a little bit more expensive. But if you're a big fan of these or you're a big toy collector, I really highly recommend these. However, there is a line that's in stores right now, here locally in the US, from Jack Pacific that they just started this last year called World of Nintendo. And you guys might have seen some of these. They did, the first wave was like Mario and Yoshi and Link, and they did a big Donkey Kong and a big Bowser, so they're kind of to scale with each other. And they're not quite as good quality as these, but they're like $8 a piece as opposed to $50, and for only paying $8, totally worth it, very cool line. And I know that, I've also talked to them, I know that they've got a lot of stuff coming out this year for that line, so that's one to watch if you're a Nintendo fan. So that, on what Rue's comment just was, brings me to kind of what's become the new hotness these days, which is Nintendo's Amiibo line. This is kind of following, obviously, hot on the heels of stuff like Skylanders and Disney Infinity, where they kind of found a way to create little extra things that you have to purchase in order to keep playing the game, but it's not quite the same effect with this.
I think it's generally called Toys to Life.
Toys to Life.
I like that. That's the phrase I've heard.
Right. So, just in this last year, these have just kind of popped up, and they've become very, very popular very quickly. These are essentially designed after the little trophies that you get in Super Smash Brothers. I'll tell you guys straight up and honest, the reason I was excited about these was because I was getting some cool new toys of Nintendo characters. Not necessarily the interconnectivity with my Wii U game or anything like that. Mostly because we're getting some characters and toy form that I had never seen in toy form before. Guys like Star Fox, Wii Fit Trainer, no, mostly Star Fox and stuff like that, have been like long overdue for something in action figure form and plastic form. There's a Wii Fit Trainer, and she's one of the hard ones to get right now. This is what's been so fascinating to me, because I look I look at these from a toy perspective, because I work a lot in the toy industry, and like I said, I love video games, but a lot of my stuff focuses on toys and collecting toys and all that stuff. And I've been watching these get so popular and so successful, and I'm watching all of these big video game sites reporting all these news stories about how some of these figures have become really hard to find, and suddenly, you know, Little Mac is, or Marth especially, is selling on eBay for $60. And then there was also the whole thing with the final products not looking as good as the prototypes. Have you guys seen like some of those stories popping up? And I'm looking at all these like being reported as actual news on these gaming sites, and it's really weird to me because as a toy collector, I have been dealing with this for every toy line that has come out ever since I started collecting. It is not news to me. And so it's really, really just, it's interesting to see all these gamers who are probably buying toys for the first time with the Amiibos. Not really, I mean, it's kind of a thing where the prototype always looks better than the final product because the prototype is usually hand-painted. It's not really kind of, like in these, they got like these little clear stands that are holding them up. Those probably weren't put on the prototypes. The clear stands were added later so that the figures didn't warp over time and fall over and stuff like that because they're in these crazy poses. So it's common for the prototype to look better than the final product. So it was just kind of funny to me to see people like reacting like that.
So the thing, well, first off, when Nintendo announced this at E3 last year, if you follow video games at all, you know Wii U is a mildly struggling platform right now. But so Nintendo came out to announce this, even though, as you said, it's not an amazing amount of functionality with Super Smash Brothers, what these are specifically made for. It's, I just thought to myself, well, Nintendo's going to be printing more money, basically.
Yeah, for sure.
Because exactly what you said, what we said before, is Nintendo has not really had at least a consistent amount of toys for their characters.
Right.
And a lot of the ones here that are popular that never even had toys. Well, maybe not like Wii Fit Trainer, but like Pit from Kid Icarus, or even Marth, which is from actually
Marth. And we're gonna be getting like Olimar and stuff like that.
Yeah,
and like all these crazy characters.
But and Duck Hunt Dog, which I'm actually
Duck Hunt Dog. Yeah, right.
Like 5 years ago, if somebody comes to you and said, "Hey, there's going to be a toy for Duck Hunt," and people are going to be going crazy over it.
Yeah.
but something about the whole stand controversy or whatever that I thought was amusing. Chris Fuller from Wired had a great point about these bumps. It's that rather obviously the designers of Super Smash Brothers basically came up with these poses for the various characters to put in the game because they're like little virtual trophies that you get in the game every time you beat the game with a certain character. And then they took those models and just transposed them directly to this toy line. And some of them, like Link there, who was literally hopping in space on one foot, is a little bit hard to get stable, as a toy. So yes, of course, they're going to need a stand to make them more robust. And supposedly that was a horrible thing. They looked terrible and people were complaining. To me, I'm not even a big toy guy, but I'm like, well, that's acceptable. I mean, I heard all this stuff, oh man, these things are terrible, cutting off the line, they look nearly as good. And I only have one Amiibo right now, I'm sorry, I'm not terrible collector, but it's a peach. So it's one of the more, there's a little more finer details, but it looked really good to me. I was actually very impressed.
Yeah.
But also going back a few slides from what you had before with like the Samus and the Sonic ones, those are being held up by stands too. Just because something in a toy is being held up by stands doesn't necessarily mean it's of poor quality. I didn't quite understand why that was such a horrible thing.
I didn't either. I really didn't. And then the other thing that I saw a lot with the Amiibos, or have seen, is there's been a few factory errors. And there was that Samus. There was a Samus with 2 arm cannons that sold on eBay for hundreds of dollars. Because it was a mistake. Yeah. It was a cool, legless peach. Yeah. And that's another one of those things where I'm just like, man, Nintendo needs to watch their quality control, because once Samus came off with 2 arm cannons, we're human, we're going to make some mistakes sometimes.
It's funny to watch, obviously an established fan base, an established industry of toys, you think we're familiar with this, and then watching an entirely different journalistic group get their hands on toys and then try to take some sort of ownership over it and mandate certain things.
It's pretty crazy.
But it's exciting to me about the Amiibos is that, I mean, they launched with Super Smash Brothers and they're constantly coming out in waves, but Nintendo's keeping this going with other game series. Some of them more obvious up front, like Mario. They're coming up, of course, with another line of Mario Amiibos beyond these that were made for Smash Brothers. There's one for like Mario Party. There's one for Captain Toad Treasure Tracker, I believe.
And they're all going to have in-game functionality.
Yeah, and they'll have different game functionalities. Not anything major, but the point is that Nintendo fans are some of the most rabid fans out there, and they will buy this, even if it's limited functionality.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
That's why Nintendo will print money.
So I like that there's microtransactions and downloadable content. It's interesting.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, it's something extra you have to pay for, but as you put up on the shelf, it looks cool.
Yeah. Right, it's like a cool collectible from your video game. That also works with your video game. I think that's pretty neat. So, I mean, we've seen how big Skylanders and Disney Infinity have been, and these have been selling well. This has been a debate a lot of people have talked about. Like, do you think this is kind of the future of all games? Is this going to be a direction that all video games are going to take, is having these additional pieces to buy?
I think it's going to be, I mean, from the way things are turning far more mobile, I think this will be important for some aspect of console gaming. I think that this will add that other missing element that differentiates it or makes it something sought after when it's just so simple to pick up your smartphone.
Right.
I do think this whole Toy Life thing is mildly faddish. You know, the first game or series really to make it explode was Skylanders, which is based off Spyro the Dragon, which most people don't even know about outside Skylanders. It's not even really around Spyro now, it's just other stuff. And the reason that was so successful is because, it's a new concept. And then Disney Infinity did something, and the reason why that was successful is because they continued that concept and it used like Disney and Marvel characters. Star Wars coming up. So they have a tremendous amount of IP that people, again, will pay. I know Disney collectors are definitely a thing.
Yeah. Absolutely.
True.
That's interesting. I was going to ask that question. Right.
Yeah, and these function a little bit differently, and some would say, oh, I don't even know why I should buy them because it doesn't unlock anything in the game, but they are selling really well, mostly because it's Nintendo and it's something new from them, which they have a great fan base. If it was anyone else coming up with a line of new Toy Story figures like Halo or something like that, that doesn't have that crazy fan base, necessarily, I don't know if it would work. I don't know if there's going to be another big Toys to Life line that will really hit it big out after the Amiibo releases.
These things are blown. I mean, these things are blown up substantially. I was in New York City in Christmas time. I saw the Nintendo store, how psychotic it was. And Amiibo, that was the thing. But what do you think the demos are on this? We all know that we love this stuff. We're like the band children. But what about, are children really into this? Because they are trying to grab a market of children. I look at my 3-year-old playing on the iPhone. I'm like, how am I going to get him to play a console? Well, if I threw an Infinity Mickey in front of him or something, he might want to turn that down to it actually go to the processor using a console.
I think, then that's getting more into a conversation about the whole demographic of Nintendo, which for a while now, at least to me, seems to be kids and adults who play Nintendo, which is a lot of people. But it's like, somewhere in the middle there, I think we probably all went through it too. When you reach those teenage years, it's like, Nintendo isn't as cool anymore. And then after you graduate college and you have, memories and disposable income, it's like, hey man, Nintendo was awesome. I think you got like these games. Of course, we're retro gamers, so we're a little special there, but in the head. So So I would say that probably kids and adults, but maybe there's a gap in the middle of people that aren't going so crazy for Amiibo. I don't know if you have many 17-year-olds and 18-year-olds that are like, I need to get every Amiibo. Not saying there aren't some, but I would say that it's probably... yeah, we can discuss that yesterday. Probably the exception.
So how many of you guys out there are collecting the Amiibos? Any of you guys buying them? Yeah? Are you guys buying them to use them with Smash Brothers? Yeah? Only 2 of you said yes. The rest of you guys are just buying them? Yeah, you're like me. That's like when I saw these revealed, I think I like tweeted immediately, and I remember Pat was responding, yeah, you would. I was like, I'm excited. I'm most excited about Amiibos because new toys.
You said you have all but like 2, right?
I have like all but 2, but I've got the other ones like pre-ordered. I just got Little Mac was the most recent one I got, which is awesome. Little Mac, more punch-out stuff is great. Yeah, I think it's really exciting, and I like it. I think it's cool to see it being so successful. I have a feeling that they will be producing more of these too. Like everybody's really rushing right now trying to get some of these rare ones, but if this goes like most toy lines that are like this, especially these bigger lines, like Nintendo's a big company producing this big line, I wouldn't be surprised if they're rare now because everybody rushed out and bought up the initial stock, but once they go into a new production run on everything, they're going to be readily available.
Also in a lot of ways.
Did they discontinue some?
No. No. That was a rumor that was going around.
Yeah.
Yeah, Nintendo haven't officially discontinued anything that they said they had no rights to.
Yeah, see, like with toys don't usually get discontinued too often, like not individual characters at least. Like this is probably looked at as an entire line. And I don't know if they're doing them necessarily in series, like most toy lines do like series 1, series 2, series 3, kind of thing. Yeah, so like they might eventually stop cutting out some of the early series stuff, but usually what toy lines do is they start building some of those earlier figures in the later waves. So you start seeing them come back again.
That's a good point. So they are doing this in waves. Nintendo has said that they have stopped producing some of the early stuff that was obviously hard to find. Marth, Wii Fit Trainer, Villager was all wave 1, but they stopped making those for the time being. And there are others that they're just continuing to make because they believe will be higher sellers. Mario, Peach, Pikachu. But the thing is that in a lot of ways, Nintendo is a rather conservative company. They're not going to go balls to the wall and say, oh my god, let's make 10 million of every figure and we're going to ride this gravy train to the 80s or whatever. They'll say
to the 80s.
But I mean,
It's so great, now it's not great.
but they'll look at Wii Fit Trainer like, oh, she's not going to sell as well, let's make a few thousand of those and see what happens. It sold out ridiculously fast, and I'm like, that did well, we'll do some more later. And I think they have actually they've already confirmed that they're going to redo Marth, which is one of the most popular ones, I think, is the edition, because there's a new Fire Emblem game coming out later in the year, and they want people to use that Amiibo for a Fire Emblem.
I want to, real quick, before I answer you guys' questions, I want to run off of what he just said. And this is a common thing in toy lines too, that a lot of times they will produce less of a character that they consider less popular, and more of the characters that they consider the heavy hitters. And retail stores have a lot more dictation on stuff like this than you guys realize. Retail probably said to Nintendo, okay, but we need this many Marios, this many Links, and this many Donkey Kongs because people know who those are and we want to make sure people can get those. It's very, very possible that happened. Because you look at stuff like, good example, the Ninja Turtles toy line. You can always find Mikey, Leo, Don, and Raph on the shelves because retail says, look, we have to make sure that kids can come in here and buy the Turtles anytime they want to. And then it makes it a little bit harder to find some of the other secondary characters. I'm willing to bet that's exactly what's going on with the Amiibos. They probably produce less of Wii Fit Trainer and Marth and Villager because they're not as popular as Mario and Samus.
Now, I have a couple questions as a follow-up. Who's producing these? Is Nintendo producing these in-house, or are they outsourcing?
I do not know that. I assume they have a subcontractor.
But they're managing the distribution. They own the distribution for it. So I'm guessing they're in a new position of battling for shelf space against established competitors on the toy shelves. I mean, video game shelf, that's one thing, but actually getting the shelf space. So I'm sure that they they have to go limited, they have to go popular, they have these limited runs with not so established there.
Right.
I think it's interesting to note that Nintendo has said that if they do discontinue any of the figures, that they'll release a card version of the that will still be functional with the...
That's true too.
But the problem with that, though, goes with what the poll I just took in here. How many people actually want their actual figure and don't care if they can use the Amiibo with their games? That's the problem, I think. Yes, I'm sure.
Yeah, as you were saying, Nintendo's in this arena where they have to, from what I've paid for the shelf space for these Amiibos. Now, I never saw a villager remark that I could promise some of those, but shortly before the holidays, I went to my local Toys R Us. We the trainers were clogging up the place. I shouldn't have, but did buy them. They were on sale. We would have gotten 3 for the price of 2. And the next week, the scarcity scare comes up.
And then everybody ran out of
And
lots.
some of them get the weirdo characters. I went back 2 weeks later, out of easily a dozen weeks of trainers go on.
And I'm willing to bet that the scarcity is somewhat pumped up by speculators. Because they know the same things that we all do. Nintendo fans are crazy, and Nintendo's conservative, and if a Marth is suddenly hard to find, they can sell one for $100 anyway. And that's something that scalpers are kind of like us.
Especially how that sort of frenzy worked for Nintendo. They had a stagnant bit of shelf space, refrigerator. As soon as that scared people along,
They unloaded them all. Yeah.
So they're selling these inventory.
They're like in the video games.
Not just Toys R Us, and not just toy stores, but Kmart, Walmart, Best Buy, also Target, anywhere you find these other toys to life things. The thing I find amusing though is like I go to a Target, I see a giant display with crap loads of Skylanders and crap loads of the same character almost, like the same 4 or 5 characters of Disney Infinity, and it's still small shelf space for the Amiibos, which again leads me to believe that somewhere, whether it's the toy stores, or the stores, or Nintendo said, let's be a little, just be a little cautious, see what happens. So they got it.
It's a somewhat new space of having those shelves, having those areas.
Yeah.
The video game section.
It's new for Nintendo.
Yeah, it's new for Nintendo, and there's probably established contracts and arrangements with those other groups, so they have to.
Yes.
Yeah, I think the scarcity actually works on there as well, not only for the leaders themselves, but for users as well. I had a friend who, first actually, the photo for Amiibo is Amiibo, just running
So the plural for Amiibo is Amiibo, in case anyone was curious.
Yes.
It's like Amigo, but for your me. It's like your me friend. Get it?
So after the scarcity square with Mark and the villager, I had a friend who was his way through the house and was pre-ordering 6 short figures.
Oh yeah.
Crazy pre-order once. Because,
And I want one.
yeah.
Well, and that's exactly what's happening. I'm seeing places like the online toy stores, like Big Bad Toy Store is one that I frequent often, and they've been putting up pre-orders for the Amiibos, and the pre-orders sell out instantly. Like they put these pre-orders up and they're gone. So I think you're right. Like people are scared now, and they want to get all these figures. They're buying everything now, and they're pre-ordering everything just to make sure that they get them. Yeah.
Well, what crazy guy bought a load of growth leaders? Did you hear about this?
I did not hear about this.
It's just like, he's a legitimate head case. He spent thousands and thousands of dollars buying Rosalina Amiibo in bulk because he didn't want other people to buy them because he doesn't like the character and doesn't like Nintendo forcing her.
Are you serious?
That's legit.
Oh
Yeah.
my.
There's like pictures of the box and the figures.
That is over the top.
Serving is
That's
awesome.
Yeah, that's awful.
Especially right now.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Any other questions about Amiibos or any toys in general? Anything you guys got? Nope. All right, you guys. Oh, right here.
I have one. It's a very cliche question.
Sure.
But what would you consider, all three of you, if you want to answer, your favorite toy that you've had since you were young, that you saved the future you can save for real?
You just want to go toy in general, or like?
Actually, whatever you
Like-
have a happy memory of a Nintendo kind of thing.
so tough because I have so many toys. I have been.
So the question was, like, what's our favorite toy?
Favorite toy, or like most cherished kind of toy, or something like that. Yeah, so I'm a long-time Masters of the Universe fan. I'm a big He-Man fan. And my favorite action figure from that line as a kid that always went with me everywhere was the Skeletor. So I would definitely claim him as my all-time favorite, along with just He-Man himself, because He-Man is just, that whole thing, is what he represents and everything is very special to me. So I would name that as my favorite thing, for sure.
I just felt like I missed out on cycles. Like, so from nursery school through second grade, I'd show up and I'd see all these kids playing with Super Friends characters. And the next day I'd show up with Super Friends and they'd be playing with He-Man. And then the next day I'd show up with He-Man and then
you were just behind on the
and I
times.
was just behind and I said, fuck these kids. Sorry, I apologize. So my favorite toy is my Atari 5200.
I like this. Behind all the times I've done it too. I don't know, I went in spurts of what I really would love. So like Ghostbusters toys, Ninja Turtles toys, and even Power Rangers for a little bit. I was just young enough to kind of have seen the first wave of Power Rangers stuff, and then I was out of it. But the Legos, which I don't know if it really, I mean, it's not an action figure or anything, but the Legos are not awesome. I mean, I just got they released Nintendo, sorry, what? They released DeLorean from Back to the Future in Lego 4, which I had to get. They just released that, and it was amazing. Yeah, you can convert it to any of the three from the movies.
I know, I just built one. My boy's sitting there next to me. The flying one.
Are you going to do another Plastic to Pixels?
Oh yes, yes. Plastic to Pixels is my video series I tried to start doing where I switched it up and started doing a video series about video games that were based on action figure lines. And I started with He-Man, because,
I love to see Barbie or G.I.
Barbie. Yeah. I want to keep doing that show. I do, so it is a little bit more work doing the video game reviews and the toy reviews because of all the footage you have to capture and everything. And I do so much, but I have so many ideas for it. So yes, the plan is to keep doing it, and hopefully I get the ball going. Just yeah, but on the Atari too. There's an Atari, that's awesome. Yes.
Do you know where I can find a functioning tech video feature that's on basis that's showing up on the
Oh my gosh, no, I know.
That might be what it
I'm sorry, I really wish I had a good answer for you, but I don't know where to check. I'm sorry. Oh, well, John might have one for you. He needs to go check.
Well, I don't know. I know, my sister loved it, so it has to be sitting somewhere.
I do remember that. I never had that. Yeah, that's awesome.
Was there another question?
Well, I think we moved on from Amiibos.
Oh, well, we had.
Oh, we can talk about Amiibos, yeah.
So,
Amiibo.
I think I kind of agree with you that I think it's going to be a fad, because once point of this thing is really high from a parent standpoint. Why are you going to buy a kid a bunch of these things?
Yeah.
And they have it on.
Right.
And for me, I don't see a toy about manipulation of the forms of those.
It's more like a figurine or a statue. Yeah. Use them for your game.
So that's a good point. So
That's interesting.
yeah, whoever didn't hear the question, or not really the question, but more statement is like, this is the gentleman believe this is maybe more of a fad because these don't articulate them like figurines and action figures, and kids will be bored or not even want in the first place. That's a good point. So I'll amend what I said before. I do think kids will be somewhat interested in these, but these are probably more for like post-college folks who are Nintendo fans. Because those are the types of people that are like, I just want a figurine that I can put up my trophy case or whatever, because they don't have the time to like go pew pew.
Yeah. Well, and the price point is a good point too, because just toys in general these days are so much more expensive than they used to be. I mean, it's a lot more expensive for them to manufacture toys now, and cost of oil and all that stuff. So that's why they're.
So why haven't their prices gone down?
I don't know. I really don't. I mean, when we were kids, we were buying toys for $3 to $5 a pop, and now the going rate for an action figure is $10 to $15. It's Yeah, sometimes 20.
But,
That's
well,
rough.
but with inflation, I mean, how much were Ninja Turtles when you were a kid?
They were about $4 or so, 4 to 5,
Really?
I'd say. I think about $4.99.
I thought they were like 6 or 7.
No.
Okay, well, regardless.
4 to 5.
But even with inflation, it's closer to 10 now. You know, so it's, I mean, the
Well,
those were 13.
I'm wondering if the same, the demos were just like one of the questions was, I'm wondering if not just game collectors or toy collectors are buying these for children. Are there, you know, speculative mothers or like, you know, remember the Beanie Baby thing? My aunt bought a ton of Beanie Babies.
And those are worthless now, by the way.
People who are outside the realm of the normal consumer of this neighborhood.
Yeah.
You think really fast and important. Like, I'm wondering if that this or if are we saying, yeah, these are toy collectors and game collectors buying these things.
Oh, there's definitely some speculation.
Yeah, no.
Right. I think that's it. We're about out of time, guys. So I want to thank you guys very much. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you guys for the time. I hope you guys enjoyed it. We have a table over in the dealer room, so if you guys want to stop by and see us or talk more toys, I'd be happy to do it with you. Okay. Thanks, guys. See ya.